Uganda conducts population census after 10 years, but we must believe that at one point we are having 2.5 million people. Currently, as we speak, we are estimated to be around over 45 million people. And 10 years back, we also had a population census. Now we are heading in another population census, which we believe that it will help in proper planning by the government. However, amidst all the population census they do, UBOS does, there are a lot of economic questions that still remain unanswered. Here with me is a senior economist, deputy Uganda Business and Technical Examinations Board. Is going to take a deep dive in the economic part, and we see how best we can strike a balance between the information we get from UBOS and the economic answers. Dr. Nahamia Wilfred. Doctor, welcome to the show and thanks for allowing me to speak to us.
Thank you for allowing us to share some views with the public.
All right, Doctor, how are the findings used in the economic growth, especially in health, education sector, and energy and agriculture? The information produced by Uganda Bureau of Statistics.
Usually, when a number of surveys are done, you can have surveys by Uganda Bureau of Statistics, can even have other several surveys, agriculture surveys and several others. And whenever the surveys are done, it means good information is collected to do with the household surveys come up with the people's expenditures, people's incomes, and the levels of education, and several others, and several others. So meaning that the surveys are very key in helping the country to plan well, in helping the sectors to plan very well. For instance, if the surveys come up showing trends in health, declining mortality, declining household incomes for the case of the income surveys and other expenditure surveys, it helps the country to plan very well. And that means that for proper planning, you need data. And those surveys basically bring out data, and the intention is that it should help the country to do very good planning.
So how do the findings of UBOS help the government to do proper planning?
You know, the way government plans in a number of ways. And as you may be aware, if I start from the bottom up approach, that you have a sub-county, which in a way is a planning unit, and from there you go to the districts. And as you may be aware, all our districts now have got district planners, sometimes called the economists, and even population officers. They are supposed to, first of all, identify what are the needs of the people. What are the needs in all the sectors you can think about, be it health, be it agriculture, be it tourism, and etc. So that information goes up, moves upwards to the different levels until the technical people in the sector, in the line ministries, Ministry of Finance and Economic Development, but also most important, as you may be aware, we have the National Planning Authority. So that information is linked up there to say, no, what do we do best? Where do we want to improve? Where do we want to what can we do in agriculture to increase production? What can we do to increase exports? What can we do to minimize imports? And several others. So it's very important that's how it helps the planning unit. And of course later, once policies are developed, once strategies and interventions are developed, then of course through the procedures of government up to parliament, and then certain interventions are approved for those planning to make meaningful interventions.
Doctor, do their findings reflect resource allocation in government agencies and ministries?
I think at some level they do reflect resource, but as you may be aware, population, maybe that would be another important aspect. Population exerts pressure on resources. As you indicated in your introduction, the population has increased and estimated now close to 46 million, and it is actually expected that it is likely to double by 2060. So if it doubles, then it exerts pressure on the population, on the resources. And once that pressure is exerted, then it means that using the limited resources, then the resources are going to be divided. They are going to be divided. You have too many people, yet you are still a growing economy. So it may now not necessarily reflect you would have wanted to put more in agriculture, but because you have limited, then you are not going to do that. You would have wanted to put more in the road sector, because you have competing objectives. Then you end up having a situation where the resources are not necessarily reflecting the planning.
Doctor, could it be the reason why we still have infrastructure caution because of this high increasing number of people, because our infrastructures countrywide, they are not performing very well? So should we think that the government has failed to service the infrastructures because of high population growth rate?
I don't want to attribute it only to high population growth, because they are still countries which are even bigger in size, Britain and others, whose population is even higher than the one of Uganda. So, but there are a number of other factors. You know, sometimes education now comes in. Once you have the population and it's not quality population, then it means you are going to have less productivity. If you have a population which is diseased, in other words, not a healthy population, and you are already having issues in the health sector, then that population is not going to even help in even improving the infrastructure. So the infrastructure issue may not necessarily be explained by an increase only in population, though it exerts on the competing issue, but the main issue is that you don't have yet adequate resources to work on the infrastructures. Because of what I had already said, you already have competing issues that you have to work on.
Doctor, what is the response to the poor planning in country and service delivery amidst availed statistical data by UBOS?
The planning, as you say, is not well, and there is a lot that needs to be done. You may recall that at a certain time there used to be a lot of planning in terms of manpower planning. Say, if I take the example of the education sector, where you do know that you want to produce so many engineers in this sector, you want to produce so many pharmacists, you want to produce so many doctors. You may have seen a situation where, despite the fact that we actually need more doctors, the doctor-patient ratio, but you have many students who have graduated with a medical degree or with a degree in medicine, but they are put on hold to practice because the situation is not allowing them to do internship for 1 year. And basically it is resources, as we had already said, which is a very serious contradiction, because you want more doctors and you have actually trained them, but you cannot afford them, you can't send them to the world of work to practice because they can't just do internship. So the planning at a certain time went haphazard, that it's not done well. That central planning, that planning according to the resources, the training institutions have reached a level where they just train. So long as I have AA, I will apply for whatever course, and then I go for whatever course I want. And nobody says, no, I can't. Also, with privatization of education, some of the institutions are just interested in the numbers of students. So you train and then leave that labor force sort of redundant. So the planning has an issue, and we need to, I think, come to the drawing board. You've seen situations where our most productive labor, the youth, it's a very, very productive labor force, between perhaps 20 and 35, is flocking out of the country. And a number of them with even good qualifications. And that's not a good sign of planning. It indicates poor planning.
Doctor, where is the loophole in taxation? Because I think given the availed statistical data, with high increasing numbers of people, they would boost our taxation correction. Where is the loophole that the government is not correcting enough taxes from people to prioritize, invest massively in priority sectors?
You know, once you have the population where you still have a high unemployment rate, you have, some people have now called it graduate unemployment. I don't know whether that word exists, but to refer to the fact that you have many people, they are churning out of the school system, of the colleges or universities, and they currently do not have productive work. They are not engaged in productive work. Now, that means that undermines your tax base, because you are taxing income and property. People do not have property, people do not have incomes because they are not employed. So because of that, you find that you are only going to struggle to get money from just a very, very few. Those with cars, you tax them because they are going to take fuel and etc., but it's a small percentage. The government workers, it's a very, very small percentage incidentally. Very, very small percentage. Meaning that you have a very limited tax base to tax, and at the end of the day, it means you don't have the money to work on whatever you can think about, infrastructures, health, education. So you have a high population, but at the end of the day, the tax is limited. You don't have even, and some people claim our taxes are high, but incidentally they are not necessarily high. But the major problem is that you just have very few people to tax. But of course, there are also, I think, a number of loopholes in the system. The number of aspects you'd have taxed and they are not taxed, and so on. And the concentration seems to be on the employed and a number of others. Because of the nature of certain things, you have properties, they are not registered. You have companies, they are not registered. And the moment they are not registered, you are going to find it hard to tax. You have people with goats, with cows, and they are selling them in the farms and so on, and you don't have a system to say, no, I'm going to tax them because somebody will sell, so and you will sell the animals, and yet you have not taxed them. So those loopholes make it hard. Doctor,
I have seen a lot of people who are supposed to be actually paying good tax being exempted in disguise of boosting investment in the country. Do you think corruption is part of the factors that have frustrated development and growth in the country?
Certainly corruption has frustrated, but exempting people, investors and whatever is not corruption. No, that should be separated, because that's not corruption. And exempting investors is usually in good faith. But most important, if you do it fairly, what type of investors are you exempting? Are they really investors worth exempting? If somebody comes with just some few dollars and then you want to exempt him, I don't think that would be fair. So that exempting people, it means you want, and very many countries that have developed went through that. incentivizing, giving people incentives, even the local investors and so on, to encourage them to first take off, and then they can create employment. But of course, putting that aside, once there is corruption in whatever, corruption is a very, very serious disease. Once that one happens, it means that even instead of collecting 20 billion per month, you will collect 10. And that means the leakages, money is not coming to the central basket, and those leakages will make it hard for planning, will make it hard to distribute the resources accordingly, will make it hard as a country to invest more, invest in the human resource and the other productive areas.
Finally, Doctor, what is your take on a theory that a country's economic growth is determined by its population growth? Does it mean that the higher population growth, the better the economic growth?
Of course, that is a debate, and I think it's going to continue as a debate. You've seen countries like China, why it is now becoming a world power. One of the factors is actually population. And you go all over, you go to any country, you're going to find Chinese. And certainly there is no debate that some of the money is again taken back home and so on. So the population, a big population creates growth, certainly. And in terms of incomes, in terms of market is very, very key. It creates demand, and the demand determines resource allocation. So as the demand increases, you are going to invest more, because it is normally demand for whatever we do, it is demand following. But most important, so it is very, very true that a high population would be a very, very big advantage to any economy, because number one issue is the demand. You are going to increase your tax base, the products will be bought, and etc. But then you must ensure that that population has the ability. In elementary economics, there is what we call the purchasing power. Once you have the population with very low purchasing power, then that population...
How can we boost the purchasing power?
The purchasing power, of course, is boosted in a number of interventions. Interventions into very strategic intervention. The likes of the Paris development models, if it is done well. The likes of the several, Uganda is actually a good example where there has been very many interventions. Enyoga, the Ntandikwa, credit schemes targeting the poor, and etc. Those ones, once they are done well and they target the households to boost their incomes. But of course, as you may be aware, sometimes it's not done well. You find that the haves, again, are the ones to benefit in such schemes. But once you target those, then certainly you boost that, and the incomes will increase, and they would be that trickle down instead of having fewer to work on the income distribution, ensure that there is equal distribution. Of course, you may not achieve perfect equality, but once you want to minimize that, then you are targeting the majority. And that's why those programs should usually they shouldn't target the Nahanyas who are already employed with government and so on. They should target the low person, the local people with low incomes, and the aim is to boost their incomes. Once you boost their incomes, you have boosted their demand, and industries will grow. Once industries grow, employment grow, and then the cycle continues.
Doctor, the very, very, very last question. How has your board, Uganda Business and Technical Examinations Board, skilled and helped to improve the economy? How useful is and the impact? You know, skilling is very, very key in any economy. And on record, most countries that are now taking off, they have benefited from skilling. Because you are empowering the people with hands-on. You are empowering the people where there are more placement areas in terms of job opportunities. You know, I have always said that if you looked at any property,
whether say a house like here where we are, you are going to find that you need many people who have trained through the BTVET sector or the TVET sector or vocational, because in any given house you need a plumber, you need an electrician, you need somebody to roof, you need a tiler, you need the general builders and several other things. And the sector, the real estate sector is growing. It is a sector that is growing. Instead of training more economists like me, I am, but at any one time you're going to find once you have one district plan and that's it. And that's it. But in a district you need several of those trained in the skilling sector. So as Uganda Business and Technical Examinations Board, it's good we are really contributing to that sector, to training and assessment, and most important, we have now increasingly gone on real hands-on training. We want to minimize as much as possible the theoretical training. What is important is somebody to come up with a piece of furniture that cannot only fetch market in the local market, but can even be exported to get foreign exchange. Because that's what is important. What can attract our tourists? What can attract our tourists if train very good chefs that can really ensure, or chefs or housekeepers in the hotel, so that when somebody says, hey, once you go in this hotel, the hospitality is very high, the nature of food they prepare is good, and is going to recommend more people, and then that comfort and so on. And that's all in the skilling sector. So it is very, very, very key. So we need to keep on increasing our hands-on training, our skilling programs that is more practical than the previous theoretical kind of training and assessment.
Doctor, you're parting shots to all those people who still have negative energy about UBTEB, or those who have not embraced UBTEB as we close this discussion.
Yes, my parting shot is that everybody needs to support UBTEB because of the fact that once you need to reduce the unemployment of the youth, once we need to ensure that job opportunities increase, I think we need to invest in the skilling sector, which increases our productivity, which ensures that the education is more practical. The education is meaningful to the nation and to the parents who are investing in it.
Thank you so much. We have been with Dr. Nahamia Wilfred, Deputy Executive Secretary UBTEB, and a senior economist. He has given a lot of opinions and alternative answers to economic questions that come along with a high population. Importantly, he has also highlighted about skilling, of which our country, being a developing country, it needs to skill more of its population because unemployment rate in Uganda is very high. Thank you so much for being part of this discussion. I remain Ivan Tukundane. This is the Ivan Show.